Okay, so let's get into the game. My first game today, which was round 3, I was black against National Master Tim McEntee. I have the name here. And we actually played like 10 years ago. And back then, I played the Budapest. I played the Budapest against him. And I drew him 10 years ago. And it was like a really good result for me because I was low rated back then. But today I was playing for a win, and I kind of knew what to expect. He played the Nimzo Indian. Yeah, this is expected. I found a few of his games beforehand. He played e3. And there's a lot of different options for black here. Black can castle, black can play this, this, this. So white has a lot to be prepared for. I played b6. It's a line that I played recently in the Norm tournament in St. Louis. And the idea is to play an early bishop a6. I guess it's important to understand white's idea. When white plays e3, sometimes the idea is just to develop like normally. But I knew that he plays this line with knight ge2 and then a3 to try and just get the bishop pair and then avoid double pawns. So the idea of b6 is that after knight e2, bishop a6, and I simply attack the pawn. And it's a little bit annoying for white to deal with. But it's okay, it's a variation. He played a3, takes, and then I played d5. So this is the best way to justify the bishop. It's no good for white to take, because then white would lose castling rights. This is very nice for black. How do you remember what you played 10 years ago? So growing up, I would save all of my games to ChessBase, and I would review them on occasion. So like the game I played 10 years ago, it's saved somewhere in ChessBase. And back then I had a PGN of like all my games. And once in a while I would just go through and look at stats. So that game kind of stuck in my mind. It was one of the first times I actually played the Budapest in a tournament. So anyway, going back to what happened in our game, he did not take. He played b3. Actually, queen f3 is an interesting line. Queen f3 was what I was kind of expecting. Idea to just pin the pawn. And then the main line is castling in g4. And it's a really cool variation. But we didn't go into that. Actually, after the game, he told me that he forgot this. Like he would have played it if he remembered, but he forgot like the line. So b3, which is actually most popular. I'm not doing challenges. I'm reviewing games. There's a very slim chance I'll take challenges later, but I have to reflect on my tournament play. Hopefully learn a thing or two. Yeah, the main challenges I'm accepting are the over-the-board challenges where I don't have a choice who I'm playing. It's just pairings. So anyway, b3. Then I started thinking, because I wasn't sure exactly what the line was. And then I came up with castling, bishop d3, and then takes. Actually, castling I played quickly, but I started thinking in this position. And kind of realized that I don't have the bishop pair. And usually in the Nimzo, you give up the bishop pair to try and get like counterplay against white's pawn structure. And in this case, it's possible after takes, and then interesting move knight c6. Usually it looks awkward for the knight to develop in front of the c-pawn. But in this position, there's ideas of knight a5, and this pawn's a little bit tender. So white castles, and then I played e5, and I was feeling pretty good. I could play knight a5 right away, but then queen e2. So there was actually a trick, which I was kind of hoping my opponent would fall into, is that after e5, if white were to play d5 here, which looks attractive, knight a5, queen e2, black to move? I think it's black to move and win material. I might be wrong. but I think I'm right. So black to move and win material. Whoa, it's a raid. It's a huge raid. Goldust Tori, what's up? Raiding with a party of 249. Hello, what do I call your people? Hello to the GD gang. I don't have any special GD gang sound effects, but I better have emotes. GD gang? Yeah, GD gang. Where is it? It's this one. Also, the I'm in danger emote is great. Shout out Goldust Tori. And shout out Chessweeb. Wow, fellow streamers. Shout out Chessweeb. Okay. If you're just joining, I am reviewing my round 3 game from the Illinois Open. And this is a good point because I just asked the chat a question right before the raid. This is black to move and play what I think is the best move. We already have a few suggestions from Cool Guy and from Liquid Sword. And hello to Garbanzo Jeans. I guess a play on words to Garbanzo Beans. Yeah, well done, Cool Guy. E4. I think this is just winning a pawn. Or maybe the exchange. Idea is, okay, bishop takes. This is just blunderous because takes, and the skewer, the c4 square is explosive. And then if knight takes, then pretty much the same thing, but at the end of this line, I'll win the d5 pawn, because bishop d3, I can take on d5, probably either way. So, I was kind of hoping for that. Hey, Sir Ramen, 2 out of 2 today, good job. Does that makes you 3 out of 4, right? If I remember correctly. What is the best free chess presentation software? Lichess. This is what I'm using right now. Lichess Study. You can save everything, organize stuff into chapters, have engine analysis and Stockfish engine analysis, as well as Opening Explorer and Table Base all built in. So after e5, my opponent played knight b5, which was kind of a slight surprise, because it looks like this shouldn't work for white. Like, I can just try and win a pawn somehow. And I really wanted to take on d4. So I started calculating. Takes. Knight takes is possible, but let's say pawn takes. Takes, so hitting the knight. And then I wanted to play queen takes d4, counter punching the rook. And it almost works, but white has a really nifty move in that position, rook a2. And then black's in trouble because the knight is hit. If my knight moves, then there's bishop takes h7 with the discovered attack. And after rook a2, I would want to play rook a d8, but then there's rook d2. And then still the double threat of taking c6 as well as bishop takes h7. So it's kind of sad. But it wasn't so sad because I didn't walk into it. But I didn't get to win a pawn. So just to show people who maybe weren't following the arrows, after takes. And like when it comes to calculating this type of stuff, it's kind of a long variation, but it's pretty forcing. Like the moves are just captures and clear attack. And yeah, rook a2 just saves the day. If rook b1, then black would be doing very well here. But rook a2, just with just keeping initiative. So rook a2, it's like a counter punch. This is a counter punch, and this is a counter punch. Music Man brings up a good point. Why not knight takes d4? This is another possibility, which I was looking into. The problem with this is that the position's wide open, and white has 2 bishops. And this one pawn on b5 fixes all these pawns. And white has initiative, like white can just play bishop b2, have initiative, threatening to take, and then take on h7. And my knight can't retreat to c6, and if it moves here, white can keep initiative, like play this, I I relied more on intuition, but I just thought this was going to be problematic. And I thought it would be difficult to win. Like, in order for me to win this, I would need to like hold on to my pawn. And I thought there's so many variations where white wins back a pawn and is just better. Because the threat here is bishop takes f6. White's going to follow up with like rook d1, rook c1, c7 would be weak. So I didn't go into any of that. I decided that I should not liquidate too soon, especially if it's not so clear. Why bishop takes b5? It's just a forcing line. I did not play that in the game. What I played in the game was rook e8. Staying calm, trying to improve the position. Some idea maybe of e4 at some point, but really just finding the best square for the rook. So bishop b2. And then I played a move where, like, when I played it, I was happy with it. But then, after white played the next move, I wasn't happy with it. I played queen d7, and I thought white was kind of stuck. I thought the queen was tied down to basically defending the pawn through X-ray vision. And I thought it would be difficult for white to find a move here. But then the problem was, white just played queen c2. And when I initially played queen d7, whoa, it's a sub. Thanks for the sub. Tom Carbo. Subbing at tier 1. Appreciate that. After queen c2, initially I thought I could just win the pawn on d4 after something like takes. I should note again that knight takes, I would be very happy to have knight e5. But white has a strong response here, just bishop f5. And my queen has very few squares. If it stays defending the pawn, then there's rook, let's say rook a d1. And white's doing very well here. Like, center is opening up. White can take back with pawn next, play d5 soon, and I would not be happy. So my queen was a bit misplaced on d7 because rook d1 is coming, and even bishop f5 is coming in some cases. So I played bishop b7, realizing my bishop is better on this diagonal, more centralized, and I want to play a6. Wanted to play a6, chase the knight here, and win this pawn. Tom Carbo saying, been watching your vids for a while. Thanks for good content. Well, thanks for stopping by the stream. I know sometimes there's a difference between watching on YouTube and watching on Twitch. Monka asks bishop f5. Yeah, bishop f5, it's like almost a queen trap. Like, my queen just has like just a couple squares. Okay, so white played bishop f5 here. But then I was happy just to slide the queen over. Then d5. So white is throwing punches. Knight a5. And then a4. I think a4 was a mistake. Looks logical at first, but we'll get to why it's a mistake. If you're just joining, this is my game from round 3 of the Illinois Open. Played earlier today. The game started at 10 a.m. Central Time, Chicago time. It's now almost 10 p.m. So this game started almost exactly 12 hours ago. I was playing Tim McEntee, who's a 2200 floor, but very experienced player. But yeah, as people will see, actually I won't give away the results, but people will see what happened. So a4, preparing this, and it looks scary because my queen's going to get chased around. But I very simply play a6 here, and then white's in a pickle, because if knight moves back to c3, I win the c4 pawn. And if bishop a3, I just play queen d8, and then the knight, only square for the knight is c3, and then I win the c4 pawn. So it turned out the only move for white after a6 is to play knight a3, which is a really sad square for the knights. And yeah, the knight's just out of the game for a while. So, not sure what white should have done. It was a little bit tricky because I am threatening to play a6 in this position, so white should probably somehow defend this pawn. Maybe the bishop should just retreat. Like, the bishop doesn't belong on f5, I don't think. and then the knight should retreat, and white should maybe focus in the center. I thought white should maybe at some point play e4 and then go for f4 and try and use the dark squared bishop. This is the only dark squared bishop on the board. I thought it could be unpleasant if white eventually gets f4 in. Knight a3, yeah, reinforcing the b1 square, very key square. And then if knight b1 is played, then we're closer to setting up for the next game. Knight b1 I don't think was played, unfortunately, until after we reset the pieces. Okay, so I play c6. I wanted to open the position. At least open this diagonal, because the bishop staring at this pawn is kind of depressing. So c6 takes. Maybe white could have played e4. I was calculating e4 and then g6 and then some knight h5 move. It would be interesting. But takes, bishop c3, bishop c8. Wanted to trade light squared bishops. I thought that like if we trade, then white's pawn weaknesses become a bit more glaring. And that was actually my one advantage is pawn structure. So white avoided the trade. And then I played a move which guarantees me to win a knight for bishop, or win a bishop for knight. Knight b4. Had enough of white having the bishop pair. But it's been interesting. Every game I played so far, even my round 4 game, yeah, all 4 games that I played this tournament, I've been the one to trade a bishop for a knight early on. So I've played like against the bishop pair all my games. Okay, in some games it was more just knight versus bishop, but I've had to try and prove the knight's dominance over bishops. Okay, so knight b4, essentially inducing bishop takes b4, and then I was very happy because, yeah, these are clear pawn weaknesses, and they're also on light squares, and due to light squared bishops, it's already looking very good for black. Rook b1 and queen d6. At first I thought queen c5 looks more natural, but then I convinced myself queen d6 actually has a lot more ideas. One idea is that it makes the queen tied down to the bishop, so white doesn't have like quick counterplay with trying to win the b6 pawn, because white would have to do something about this guy. And then also, queen c5 would take away the c5 square for my knight. I thought knight d7 to c5 is a very possible maneuver. And then the last possibility is if I do get in knight c5, then my queen can swing over someday to the king's side. And all of that pretty much happened. White played h3. I think white was scared of... Oh, this was another idea of queen d6, was e4 and knight g4, with mating ideas on h2. And then sometimes if g3, the queen comes to h6. So lots of arrows. This is thumbnail worthy. This might be the thumbnail if I put this on YouTube someday. Okay, so h3. A little bit slow. Play bishop e6, queen b3. Not threatening the pawn because, okay, the queen's tied down to the bishop. But I defend the pawn anyway and get ready to fork the queen and the bishop. My opponent saw the threat. Follow the Ben Feingold rule. Always play bishop f1. And then I play rook b8. Over defending the pawn, just so my knight can come to the promised land. Knight c2. Yeah, so this knight was super depressed. It's still kind of sad on c2. But white has some idea someday of playing this and this. But it never happened. Knight c5, attacking the queen, and then bishop f5. So I think starting around queen d6, if we just go back here, the play just flowed really nicely, even going back to knight b4. Like from this position, like all my moves just felt very, very natural. Like just developing, improving, finding better squares for my pieces. And then after bishop f5, white's under a lot of pressure. And there's some nice tactical ideas coming up. First of all, bishop f5 is threatening a double attack. Which I'll ask the chat. Let's imagine it's black to move here. What can black play to double attack something? Okay, good job, guys. Queen g6. Yeah, queen g6 it's a nice double attack, creating the battery, so threatening the knight and threatening h3 because of the pin. Yeah, multiple people found it. Good job, Ivan Nilos, Mr. Waffle Truck, Gobbler. Yeah, so it was a sneaky threat because at first it just looks like I'm pinning, but I do have a threat. And I was hoping my opponent would play rook d1 here. After rook d1, I have a really cool move. I don't know if it works. I haven't checked this with the engine, but I think it works. Oh, also I still have queen g6. Yeah, I could still play queen g6 and just win the pawn on h3. I'll just go ahead and show it. I was probably going to play knight takes a4, even fancier, counterattacking the queen. And there's like so many nice lines here. For example, takes, the knight's attacked. I'll have knight e4 with tempo. I'm just up a pawn. a5 will come eventually. If the queen moves to b4, I'd just have queen c6. Like, this knight's still attacked. If queen takes knight, I win a exchange in the end. I'd just be completely winning here. Is there any other line? Pretty sure all the lines worked. Like, even queen b3, I just play queen c6. Or no. Wait, queen b3. Oh, queen b3, I play knight c5, just moving back and just attacking the queen. So it was nice, nice possibility. But I think my opponent saw the threat of queen g6 and played rook c1 just to defend, which is probably one of the best moves. And then I kept improving, a5, fixing this pawn on the light square, and preventing knight b4, so it's positional in multiple ways. And white's very stuck here. Like, I thought maybe at some point white would just be in zugzwang, because things are tied down. Like, it started to become very difficult for white to find a move here. White played rook to a2. I played kind of a nifty retreating attacking move, bishop d7, hitting the pawn on a4. Because this pawn, it's not easy to defend. White had to play rook c to a1. And I play queen g6. So I have initiative, and I'm just improving in the process. Idea of bishop d7 was to maybe put the bishop along the long diagonal. Now queen g6, I'm threatening bishop takes h3. So king h2. I keep making threats. Queen f5. Queen f5, I'm just attacking f2. I was hoping for king g1. Like, there's so many possible tactics, but my opponent wasn't falling into anything. After king g1, I have... Actually, I'll ask the chat again. Black to move. Find the best move. Okay, everyone's saying knight e4. Knight e4, it's a fork, kind of, but white defends with queen e1. So good job again to Ivan Nilos and Mr. Waffle Truck and Iron Robot. Queen takes f2. Move order is very important. Like, if you see knight e4, you should also see queen takes f2 and then decide which order is most effective. Wait, did Sub Gobbler say easy and not find it? Ah, Sub Gobbler said knight e4 easy, but probably missed queen takes f2, or you were hacked. Also, Jarek C. Hey, thanks for the sub. The voice thing is a little bit messed up because I'm not on my normal computer. It's like some echo. But I appreciate the sub and the comment. Okay, so Sub Gobbler was hacked. But yeah, okay, queen takes f2 is simple tactics, and then I would be attacking the rook in the end. Wait a minute. What if this? Okay, knight takes queen, of course, and then this. Bishop c6. The knight's almost trapped here. Like, maybe I would have to bail out with this, but okay, bishop c6, and knight returns to e4. So, opponent played 91. I should also note my opponent was like under 2 minutes here. I had about 20 minutes. So it was a great position to just kind of keep the pressure and keep making threats. But it was impressive, like my opponent just wasn't blundering even in time pressure until maybe a bit later. So I played bishop c6, knight d3. White wants to trade. Play 94. Again, attacking the queen and the pawn. Queen b2, defending everything. And then I had to figure out what to do. And I decided why not improve more things. Knight g5. For some reason I thought I played rook e6, but knight g5, unleashing the bishop. Some ideas of e4. Also some ideas of knight takes h3. Also ideas of just later lifting the rook. So knight e1 back. Sad move. Then rook e6. So if we look at white's pieces compared to black's pieces, it's paradise. It's just, no, it's very comfortable, but it still takes work. I think these types of positions, it's easy to get relaxed and get lazy, but it did still take work on my end to actually break through. And then c5 was played. Yeah, when I played rook e6, I saw c5 coming and decided I'd be well off to put the bishop on d5 and then play this. So what I did was I removed the rook from helping defend f2. Now the knight is forking some pawns. And if pawn takes pawn, I hit the queen and then I'll win f2. But yeah, he found a good move here, knight d3. Bishop e3 is illegal. Maybe you mean bishop e3 is illegal, but you probably mean bishop d3. If bishop d3, I think I can just take, getting out of the pin. And the queen's undefended on b2. My knight defends my queen. Do you think it's a good idea for unrated player? Unrated could mean anything. But yeah, I mean, I think it's completely fine for Illinois Open to be like your first rated tournament. But it depends on the player, like if they have enough experience like online and know over-the-board rules. Usually at US Open every year, there's a few unrated players. It's like first tournament is like the biggest tournament in the US. Oof, welcome back. Just in time for the end of my round 3 game. So my opponent played knight d3. And then I took a think because I wasn't sure what to do. It was like a weird position, like things were just kind of tied down. I can't take the pawn because of the pin. So I played what looks like a passive move, but I was actually happy with the move. Knight f6. Oof is subbing. Gifted by not a GM, John Davis. Thanks, John Davis. And thanks, Oof, for being a loyal fan. Illinois Open is in Illinois. Big surprise. It's in Downers Grove. It's a suburb of Chicago. Yeah, 1272 subs. That's a huge number. That's like a beginner-rated chess player. Okay, knight f6. Yeah, my knight was just in the way of things. Knight f6 does... It makes like 3 different things happy. It makes everything here happy. Unleashes the queen, the bishop, ideas of e4 again. Also ideas of knight d7 to defend the rook, break the pin, and then eventually take the pawn. Also ideas of knight g4, like knight g4, rook h6 could be cool. And then there was another idea too, which I got to play in the game. After rook c1, I was so happy to play this move. Bam. G5. I think every game. Has it been every game? Maybe not my round 4 game. Not my round 4 game, but my first 3 games, G5 occurred in all of them. And in every case, G5 was like a fun, kind of aggressive move. And a few of the games, or one game my opponent played it. But yeah, G5 here, it's again multi-purpose. I'm creating Luft for the king, so I don't want to get back rank mated. And I also want to play G4. Like most of white's pieces are just on the queen side, not defending the king. And most of my pieces are contributing to some attack. So g5, it's just some nice added pressure to break this this pawn shelter. Are you in contention to win? Yes, it all comes down to tomorrow. I'm tied for second with a bunch of other players. And the guy in first place is playing the top seed. The guy in first place is an FM. He's playing a GM tomorrow. So, I was happy. g5. Pawn takes pawn. Rook takes pawn. Oh yeah, I didn't take with my e-rook because that hangs the e5 pawn. So I take with this rook. Rook c8, king g7. I have some nice initiative, like this is attacked. Also, it's important to note my queen is aligned with this rook, which is relevant in just a few moves. Queen to c1. And then I think at this point it's just a forced win for black. I'll just show what happens. e4. Yeah, the knight is just driven away from defending f2. And after knight c5 attacking my rook, I simply move over. And it's a double attack. Queen's hitting the rook, and queen's hitting the pawn. And once f2 falls, it's just crushing. So my opponent actually resigned here. He had less than a minute, and it is pretty hopeless. During the game, I really wanted to make knight g4 work. Like knight g4 takes, and then like this, threatening mate. I think the problem is queen here. It gets weird because my king lacks shelter. But then I realized afterwards that I have rook h6 here. And after king g1, I can take the rook. This wins the exchange. But I think what I did in the game is even more troublesome for black, or for white. Just rook d6, and I'll have knight g4 later where it'll be more powerful. So that was my game. That was round 3. I think it was a solid game. I think it's one of these games where the losing player didn't make like a huge blunder. It just kind of got worse and worse. He fell victim to time pressure. But yeah, the middle game was kind of tense. I felt a little bit worse around here. Like after queen d7, queen c2, I just felt worse, and then I think there's some transformation probably with this a4 move. And then after the c6 move takes, I think this is kind of the turning point where white was left with this ugly pawn structure, and it was very positional. And yeah, play flowed very nicely. And during like the sequence of moves where I just improved, like I was able to play every move in pretty much less than a minute, which is pretty quick for this time control. Usually I average maybe 2 to 3 minutes a move, but it was nice to just play quick moves and realize my opponent had very little active play. So there we have it. Combination of positional chess, initiative, g5,